Hello. I see you. Welcome back to another Coffee Coaches. We are so excited to be here. And today we are going to talk about some frequently asked questions that you all have around the curriculum work that we've been doing all year long. So we are super excited to be able to answer some of these questions for you and help clear up any questions or misconceptions you may have. So, Sandy, would you like to get us started with discussing around why we're not specifically using PBGRs?
Sure. So a question that I hear from people or I read in minutes is sort of like a question about the PBGRs. And sometimes I hear, why aren't we using the Vermont PBGRs? And sometimes I also hear, why aren't we using the Vermont standards and meaning the PBGRs? So I just wanted to clear up one thing about that is that the Vermont state standards are actually the national standards that different content areas have adopted. So for example, when referring to the Vermont state standards in English, they're the Common Core standards that have been laid out. So those are the state standards. The PBGRs are actually a sample document that Vermont created for different content areas that note the proficiencies, what would be needed for proficiency-based graduation requirements. And these are sample documents. They're not the state standards. So we're not using those in jump rope as indicators, those PBGRs, for a few different reasons. One is they're grouped in grade bands. So because they're grouped in grade bands, they don't give the same amount of specificity or like articulating a specific grade level outcome that we would get in, say, those grade level standards that are in the national standards that we are looking at, like the Common Core state standards or the SHAPE. They give, or whatever it might be, many of those articulate specific things. Another reason is that whether you're in the state of Vermont, and definitely if you're outside of the state of Vermont, those sample proficiency indicators that are part of the Vermont PBGR sample documents right now, different programs don't refer to them. So our school, our SUs use different programs, for example, like Bridges Math, or we use the MAP assessment, or we use a specific literacy program. When those programs are referring to standards, they're going to refer to the Common Core state standards. They're not going to refer to the Vermont PBGRs. And in some areas, there's a huge disconnect between the language in, say, MAPS or Bridges and the Vermont PBGRs. So we'd like to just go to the direct document. And then finally, I guess another thing to know is that there's actually going to be some updates to the Vermont PBGRs. They are looking at revamping what they put out a while ago, and they're going to, we haven't seen them yet, but we know that in the future, hopefully in the next few months, we've heard they're coming out, the AOE will put out more sample PBGRs. And we would like to look at those to inform the work. Are we doing it the right way? But again, we're not going to use them if they're in grade band levels. And if it's something that's changing like that, it might be hard to build a curriculum on that. The Common Core state standards haven't changed, or the different state standards, national standards. So those ones we want to stick with right now. Ooh. And I hope that cleared things up, but I said a lot.
That was a lot of really great information, Sandy. Nice job with that. Thank you. I'm actually cleared up a little bit too, so thanks. So the next question that we have been getting a lot is somebody going to be looking at this to do the vertical and horizontal alignment? And how and when is all of this happening? And yes, that work is going to be done once we have, each group has sort of picked their priority standards of what they feel are most important and that work is completed, then the next step is going to be having a group of people look at making sure things are going to be vertically and horizontally aligned. And that information will be coming out soon. It is being worked on. We're developing it right now, trying to come up with a plan how to best make that happen. And when I say we, I mean Lisa and the coaches. And as soon as we have that information, we will get it out to you. So I hope that answers that question. The next question is around Act 173 and coordinated curriculum and that whole realm of ideas. And so Alina is going to fill us in a little bit on that.
Yes. So the Act 173 has 4 different levers to it, is what the state calls them. And one of those levers is coordinated curriculum, which is all of the work that we're doing in our GRCSU PLCs. Some of the aspects of that coordinated curriculum are like what Jenny was just talking about. It needs to be vertically aligned. It needs to be horizontally aligned. The state gave some attributes of what makes a strong coordinated curriculum, which include those types of alignment, also things like backwards design, where we're starting with the standards first. You also may have heard it as developing with using understanding by design. High quality instruction and assessment, personalized learning, flexible pathways, and then integration and transfer of student skills across different contents. With all of this, the Act 73 guidance that has been coming out over the last couple of years means we have to take a look at the work that our SUs had done individually, and then when we merged several years ago and we, meshed our different sets of curricular work together, part of having a good coordinated curriculum means we have to revisit it and take a look at it and use that cycle of what's working, what's not working, what's best. And especially now that our SU is larger after the merger, how are we making sure that we're having equitable learning opportunities and equitable access to all of the most important indicators across all of our schools? Sandy was mentioning programs. Everyone doesn't have to be using the same program, but we want to make sure that whatever programs we're using are addressing those priority indicators that our SU has identified. So that's why we need to, we're going to always need to be looking at our curriculum. It's never static. It's always something that needs to be revisited. And with this new guidance that we have from Act 173, it gives us a little bit clearer of a picture than we had the last time we did this work.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so our next question is around the priority standards identified for a course, and which indicators will be available and which ones will not in Jump Rope for next year. And Sandy is going to explain that a little better to us.
Well, I think one of the I think you kind of just said what I was going to say in a way, in that the priority standards will be what's in Jump Rope. Some people have asked me, like, how does this work that we're doing and identifying what the priority standards are for this course, what does that have to do with like next year, or what's the end goal? Well, one thing that I think is pretty immediate is that when you go to Jump Rope next year, when you, instead of having to pull in and find all sorts of different indicators, because some people can pull up, if you go to ELA, there might be English from elementary, there might be middle school ELA, there might be Common Core language, there might be PBGR sample language. So your course would have the standards that your department has determined as the priority standards, or for that grade level, or courses, I guess I should say. So what you define as your priority standards, this work will eventually get to a point that those standards are the only thing that is available for you in jump rope, so that you can have a more specific and clear focus on what you're assessing in jump rope.
But what do I do with all those other standards?
All right, I think this one's me. So prioritizing your standards does not mean you are not teaching all of your standards. It's just the priority standards are what you're going to be assessing, what your parents are going to see on those quarterly reports that you send home throughout the year. You are still teaching all of your standards. So one of the ways that we've thought about it is that our priority standards are those standards that are really comprehensive and rigorous. And then we have those standards that support those really rigorous standards. And so our team actually has a few examples that we want to show. And before I show the examples, or at least the example that I have, is I want to say that this is not the right way. It is just one way that we have chosen to prioritize these standards. So all right, so the example that we're going to look at is a kindergarten example, and we are really just looking at the reading standards here, not all of ELA. So every grade band, every content area, you have been given your national standards in a document that is located in your group's PLC folder. And your documents for K-5, this is what they look like. Yours may have highlights on them already from previous work that you did. We did not get rid of any old highlights. So as we were picking our example priority standards, this is the document that we were referring to. This has Common Core language on it. It's taken straight from the website. And what we did is we followed the protocol that was given in the PLC agendas, and we used this template right here to help organize our thoughts. So we started with the reading foundational skills for kindergarten, super important. And what we did was we looked at these 4 standards and we picked out the one that was the most rigorous and sort of encompassed all those others. So we looked at demonstrating understanding of the organization and basic features of text, really important for kindergartners to understand. Demonstrate understanding of spoken words, syllables, and sounds, knowing and applying grade level phonics and word analysis skills in decoding words, and then reading emergent reader text with purpose and understanding. And our thought process was, in order for a kindergartner to be able to meet the standard of reading an emergent reader with purpose and understanding, they had to have those other 3 skills. A child could not get a 3 on this standard here unless they were also getting 3s over there. And so then we went through and we just looked at the different chunks of standards on the way through and just found what kind of matched up, what supported. You will notice that we included the fictional and nonfiction. Words are escaping me today. Even though the language is almost identical at kindergarten, it's not identical as kids go up in grade level, but we felt it was really important that we understand that there is a difference between reading those fiction texts and those nonfiction texts for these kiddos. As you go up in the grades, you might find that some of that informational text, those standards may be a little bit more important, and you choose those to be your priority standards with some of those other standards supporting it. I will also point out at this grade level, we had, if I can find it, we did have one, right down here, this last one. We had one reading informational standard with prompting and support, ask and answer questions about unknown words in a text, which we felt was a really great supporting standard for one of the kindergarten language standards. So your supporting standards in one topic area may be a supporting standard in another, as is the case here with the informational text and the language. So that is an example of some work that we did at the elementary level. And again, not the correct way, just one way.
Excellent.
Right. And then I think
so much. So
yeah.
Alina's going to show us that the more upper level of things, the high school level of things.
Yeah, so Jenny, you can go ahead and put my screen up. This one's not as comprehensive and it's definitely not done. This is just something I threw together just so that we can take a look at a different content area. So this is a science example, you know, probably not too surprised that I would use a science example. But in this case, we're just looking at on the left there, that is a chemistry indicator that is using that protocol. Like this is the one that is the most rigorous, the most important. When we think about all students and what do all students need when they're going to graduate from chemistry, because again, at the high school level, we're now really talking about we're sending students off into the world. So what do we think all students need to be successful? So in this case, the one that I threw over in here is construct and revise an explanation for the outcome of a simple chemical reaction, you know, with some more stuff with it. But this one is really at the core of chemical reactions. And then over to the right are two NGSS standards that go with it, because this first one here, 1-5, is looking at reaction rates, so how fast or slow a reaction happens and how you can affect that. And then the one below it, 1-6, is looking at reaction equilibrium and how you can make adjustments there and how that affects things. So there are things that go with chemical reactions. And if I were teaching this as a unit, I would absolutely include all of these things together as part of that unit. But when it comes down to it, in jump rope and reporting out, I'm really reporting out on what all students need to know and demonstrate, which in this case is that they can construct and revise explanations for chemical reactions. Sorry if anyone is not a chemistry fan. That's my comfort zone, and I figured some of the high school people might appreciate something a little more technical.
I think it's great, Alina, and I do miss chemistry. Biology, I don't miss. So thank you for not using a biology, because that might trigger some PTSD with frogs and things. Awesome. Thank you so much for both of those.
Okay. So you can put my screen back down.
Oh yeah. Here.
Or do I stop it?
I got it. I can do it for you.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Okay, so the next thing that we are going to take a look at is website page with info. Corey?
Goodness, I'm like so not with it today. I'm like clicking all the wrong buttons here. Okay, so we have decided to add a page to the coach's website with all the information for PLC that you might be looking for. First thing, if you have not yet bookmarked our website, we highly encourage you to do so. It is linked, I think, in many of our email address signatures, maybe all of our email address signatures, but you can also get to it from the GRCSU homepage. If you go right to resources, and if you click on PBL Online Education Resources, it brings you to the coach's website. If you scroll down, we now have a button for GRCSU PLCs. And on this page, you are going to find hopefully anything that you might need related to PLCs. So we have included the affinity group list so that it's easy to find. This is who's in your PLC. This is your PLC link. We've included a link that goes straight to the PLC drive. We will post the sample agenda for the month. Please note that every month we make a copy of the agenda and customize it for your group, and that is placed in your group's folder. We have a video from back in October where we went into depth on the timeline and expectations and outcomes of PLC for this year. And then we've also linked previous communications that we've had for you, just in case you have questions about something that was said previously. It's now located all in one space for you to be able to find it.
So handy. Thank you, Corey. So handy. Is there anything else that we missed or any thoughts that people want to add before we go?
Thanks. I did realize that there was another question that I've heard. And to be honest, when I first heard it, I thought, yeah, I see what you're saying. And then I thought more and I came to the other side. So what I wanted to say is some people are saying, well, why are we doing this prioritizing of standards if they're already out there? Can't we just use another districts, or Achieve the Core has them? Or if they might be changed in the end process, why are we doing this? So I understand that question. And like I said, at first I thought, oh, okay, good point. But really what it comes down to is a few things. One, there's really great learning in the actual process of doing. So when educators sit down and do the unpacking of the standards, the looking at it, the thinking about that, when they do that together, and they do that more than once because things change and curriculums change and students change, that's where real learning and growth happens. I did have a very exciting conversation with a teacher who reached out to me and said that this process made them realize there was this one small standard indicator that they really had never thought about. And then that realization prompted that teacher to reach out to another teacher in another building to get an idea of how they handle that, which really is the whole essence of a PLC. And when standards drive that work rather than specific content, it actually, I have seen it really open up conversations for teachers. And it's exciting. So the preliminary drafting of the prioritized standards, we want all teachers to be involved in that. So all voices can be heard and everyone can do the thinking together. There does come a point though, where it's helpful to have a smaller group with a bigger, looking at that big picture, like we have already talked about, like what about the vertical alignment? What about the horizontal alignment? So yes, in the end, there might be some tweaks to your preliminary draft of prioritized standards, but that's really, again, in the essence of what's best for students so that we know there's a vertical alignment. And it's hard for one group to see all of that, to see both the vertical and the horizontal. So, that would be the next step after we get your preliminary drafts, but we really do value the actual work of looking at those standards and doing this together. That's it. That's my thought. And I like the, vertical, horizontal, that it's a fun movement if you ever just want to try it out. Dance move.
Yeah, and Sandy, just because I know we were talking about this earlier, those resources like Achieve the Core, like if your group wants to use that as a resource to take a look at, and if you agree with what they have in Achieve the Core, then great. But we just wanted all of the groups to look at it and not just say, oh, we're just going to use this. Like we want to actually make sure that what they have outlined is in agreement with what our SU believes is most important for all students. And I guess last little piece is if you guys have additional questions that throw them out there for us so we can do our best to either answer them or find answers for you, which is what often happens.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Any other final thoughts? All right. So we will see you again in a couple of weeks. And we will be talking about February in-service. So until then, everybody stay warm and take care of you.